Welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're looking at what has to be one of the absolute most incredible transformations in modern history. We're going to explore how these basic European trading companies over in 18th century India literally evolved from just buying and selling goods into these massive, fully fledged military conquerors. It's the ultimate corporate to conqueror story, right? And the whole stage for this massive shift was a series of intense conflicts we now call the Carnatic Wars.
All right, so here's our roadmap for the Explainer. We're going to start with the race for India, then move right through the First Carnatic War, check out the epic clash between Dupleix and Robert Clive, and see the final French defeat. After that, we'll unpack exactly why the English actually won and how that paved the road to empire.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Part 1, the race for India and a very narrowing field of competitors. So, by the 18th century, India was basically the absolute center of this intense European rivalry. But you see, the field was thinning out. The Portuguese, who were actually some of the earlier rivals, were totally in decline. And the Dutch, well, they were weakening too. Meanwhile, the English were expanding their footprints super rapidly, which left just one major European power still standing in the race against them: the French. The French had been firmly entrenched there since 1664 under King Louis XIV. So it really came down to a head-to-head clash between these two remaining giants to decide the entire future of the subcontinent. And the French, they had a seriously impressive geographic footprint going on. They had set up these vital centers all across the map, places like Surat, Masulipatam, Chandernagore, May, and Karaikal. But the absolute nerve center, the headquarters of all French power in India, was Pondicherry. Now, initially, these were just places to do business, but a massive political shift in the local landscape was about to change literally everything. The crucial turning point here was a sudden, massive political vacuum. Following the death of Emperor Aurangzeb, the once unbeatable Mughal Empire actually began to fracture. It's like a giant puzzle coming apart. As regional powers rose up to fill the void and these crazy succession disputes broke out everywhere, the European companies realized something absolutely audacious. They realized, hey, we don't have to just be traders anymore. We can pick sides, we can fund our own armies, and we can gain some massive local influence. And that brings us directly to Section 2, the First Carnatic War, where global rivalry finally hits India. Now, what's wild is that these wars, which were fought mostly in South India, were actually deeply tied to geopolitics happening thousands of miles away. In 1746, Britain and France were actively fighting each other in the War of Austrian Succession over in Europe. And because news took literally months to travel by ship back then, European enemies inevitably ended up exporting their wars right to their Indian settlements. So the local spark that actually kicked off the First Carnatic War, it was the French moving in and capturing Madras straight from the English. Of course, this capture absolutely shocked the local Indian rulers. The Nawab of Carnatic decides to intervene to reassert his local authority, and that leads us to the Battle of St. Thom. And wow, this battle is a massive reality check for the era. Picture this: a tiny, highly disciplined French force of maybe 1,000 men entirely routed a traditional Indian army of 10,000. No way, right? But it proved once and for all that European military organization and discipline were devastatingly superior to traditional Indian forces at the time. So the First Carnatic War formally ends in 1748 with the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, and as part of that peace deal, Madras is returned to the English. But make no mistake here, guys, this treaty, it really just hit the pause button on a boiling conflict. The fundamental rivalry was completely unresolved. They were just catching their breath. Let's move right into Section 3, Dupleix versus Robert Clive, a true clash of ambitions. The Second War kicked off over local succession disputes in both Hyderabad and Carnatic. Both the English and the French jumped right in, backing rival claimants to the thrones just to boost their own political influence. So the burning question was, with both of these massive companies playing kingmaker, who would ultimately dominate South India? Well, it really came down to two men. On the French side, you had Joseph-François Dupleix. This guy was wildly ambitious. He deeply understood exactly how to manipulate Indian political conflicts for European advantage, and he genuinely dreamed of building a massive French empire in India. He had some major early successes too, and for a hot minute, it really looked like the French were going to dominate the whole board. But then, the English found an extraordinary leader of their own, Robert Clive. Remarkably, Clive actually started out as just a mere company clerk. But he emerges out of nowhere as this tactical military powerhouse who struck decisively everywhere Dupleix schemed. And 1751 was the pivotal year here. This is the year Robert Clive successfully captured Arcot, which was the capital of Carnatic. This brilliant military move became the absolute turning point of the war. I mean, it dramatically boosted English prestige and just completely shattered the French momentum. Gradually, the English gained the upper hand in South India, and a totally defeated Dupleix was eventually recalled back to France. Without his ambitious leadership pushing them forward, French expansion just significantly weakened. Which leads us to our fourth section, the final French defeat, or what's also known as the Third Carnatic War. Things escalated super quickly toward an ultimate showdown. Sparked by the outbreak of the 7 Years' War back in Europe in the 1750s, this Third War became the final, decisive struggle between the two powers in India. Let's look at how it played out. The absolute climax of this era hits in 1760 with the Battle of Wandiwash. This was it, the whole shebang. The English decisively crushed the French forces. The French commander, Count de Lally, completely failed to stop the English expansion, and shortly after this really shattering defeat, the incredibly proud French headquarters of Wandiwash fell straight to the English. Now, what's really interesting here is the aftermath. The conflict officially ended with the 1763 Treaty of Paris. And sure, yes, the French did get their trading centers back, including Pondicherry, but they were forced to accept incredibly strict conditions. We're talking no fortifying settlements and definitely no maintaining large armies. So the French were allowed to stay in India, but their teeth were completely pulled. Their grand political ambitions in the region were effectively destroyed forever. So the English became the dominant European power. But why? Let's pivot to Section 5, why the English won, the postmortem. When we compare the two sides, the differences are honestly pretty stark. Out at sea, the English had heavily superior naval control, which meant they could constantly resupply with fresh soldiers and money, while the French were just blockaded or isolated. Financially, Britain utilized a highly advanced banking and credit system to rapidly mobilize resources, whereas the French East India Company was basically facing constant money struggles. Then you look at leadership. The English enjoyed stable political backing from home and really coordinated officials in India. France, on the other hand, was totally plagued by internal political issues back in Europe. And geographically, the English held this powerful, defensible, strategic triangle of settlements at Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta, whereas the French settlements were much, much harder to defend. Summarizing all of this, we get 6 core factors of English success. They basically outsailed, outfunded, and outorganized the French, period. Add to that their highly disciplined officials and the fact that they successfully developed incredibly strong local alliances with Indian rulers and bankers, and you've got this multi-layered, unbeatable advantage. It wasn't just blind luck, it was superior logistics, deep pockets, and some seriously brilliant strategy. This brings us to our final section, the road to empire, and how these wars left India permanently changed. The ultimate takeaway from all of this, what you should really remember, is the sheer scale of the transformation. By the end of the Carnatic Wars, the whole facade of being simple, humble merchants, that was entirely gone. These European companies had evolved into military and political behemoths. And crucially, the English East India Company now faced exactly 0 serious European rivals in India. Now only local Indian powers stood between the company and total political domination. The road to British rule was thrown wide open, which leaves us with a totally fascinating thought to end on. With the French completely out of the way, how exactly would the English use this new unchecked power in upcoming explosive battles like Plassey and Buxar? How do they transform from a powerful trading company into the ultimate ruler of the entire Indian subcontinent? Well, that is a story for another time. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.